My name is Douglas Bourn. I'm Professor of Development Education at University College London. So today is the first of a series of 3 webinars we're having in partnership with the Global Education Network Europe, looking at the whole area of global citizenship education and a range of national contexts within Europe. So without any further ado, I'll pass over to 𝗚𝗹𝗫𝗯, Executive Director of 𝗫𝗡. Over to you, Liam.
We're really glad to be here because some years ago, when in 𝗫𝗡 we co-founded Angel together with University College London, with Bamberg, with Oulu, and then with other academic institutions, we were determined to narrow the gap between policymakers and researchers. We're conscious that policymakers have a research agenda in this field, and we were also determined to ensure that networking for quality research would assist in developing this burgeoning area. And as the research field has grown, in 𝗫𝗡 our interest is to ensure that researchers know what policymakers need and are interested in, and that policymakers can have access to the latest and the best research in this field. So we discern what policymakers are interested in, what their research needs are, based on our regular roundtables. Just a word about we can't ignore the context that we're living in, and it's a world that, as you know, is characterized by turmoil, conflict, and the active manipulation of minds, and actually the clear and present danger that our values in global education are under attack and are being actively undermined. So we believe that as educators, it's our job in the face of this to construct hope and to be ready for the day when we see the back of the genocidal maniacs and the war-mongering want-to-be dictators. The pendulum will swing back in our direction in favor of the values that we hold dear.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Liam. So my name is Anna Larcher, and I am from the 𝗫𝗡 Secretariat, and I work in the research and policy linkages and work in connection with Angel. And it brings me to these broader points that Liam made about the connections between research and policy. We believe that this series contributes to deepening these connections in many ways. One is by nurturing this research community that we have around Angel that is committed and also better prepared to support policy processes. But it's also about supporting the policymakers so that they have a better understanding of research processes and methodologies, and that they are better prepared to engage with research, analyze evidence, and use it. And it's by creating these spaces like this one for mutual learning and sharing that we can achieve this. And finally, it's just a word about what Liam said, and we all feel that our shared values are being threatened, and that this education rooted in democracy, solidarity, and social justice is being challenged. But at the same time, and we know this through our own research in 𝗫𝗡 and through public opinion evidence, a large part of our societies continue to share our values, but somehow it seems that the other side are speaking louder or better. So I think we need to harness our collective power to support global education, and we believe this webinar is a step in that direction. So it was with these very big ambitions that we planned this series. And I'm now very pleased to introduce the first webinar of this series that for us explores very important research on how global citizenship education is reflected in national policies across 8 European countries. And so I'm very pleased to welcome Giordana Francia, which is the coordinator of the Global Education Times project that led this research. And also a warm welcome to Salete Coelho, a colleague and friend who will coordinate the presentation together with the researchers involved in several countries in this study, Elena Zygouri from Greece, Luisa Lopez and Rafael Moreno Catalá from Spain, and Valerie Lewis from Ireland. So, Giordana, over to you. You have the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you all for this opportunity. And I will just step in briefly to say a few words about the project under which the research we are discussing today was conducted. It's GET, it's Global Education Time, from school curricula to youth actions for sustainable development. Is an initiative funded under the European Commission DEAR program and led by CISP, Sviluppo dei Popoli, an Italian NGO, in 8 countries. And its objective is to help integrate the approach and content of global citizenship education into formal education of the 8 partner countries in an increasingly structural way. And GET project activities integrated 6 key elements to effectively incorporate GCE into formal education, and they act at different levels. So the teaching and learning levels through the production and capitalization of curriculum relevant teaching and learning materials and training and support for teachers. At the awareness raising level, through a social media communication campaign to disseminate GCE teaching and learning materials, through youth activism at youth activism level, through active involvement of students in learning processes and as active citizens in their communities. That's why from school curricula to youth actions. And at school level, through the GCE assessment and reflection tools designed specifically for schools. And last but not least, at the advocacy level, through the advocacy targeting educational authorities, so through the result of studies on the opportunities and challenges for global citizenship education within the policies, within the school curricula and textbooks of the 8 partner countries. These studies were carried out as part of the initial activities to ensure the project could incorporate the findings into the implementation of its subsequent actions. And the main topic of the GET project are especially climate change, gender, global inequality, and migration. So it's therefore with great pleasure that I give the floor to the GET research team, and I take the opportunity to thank them very much for their enormous work, specifically La Salete, who coordinated the group for this research, and the researcher of the case studies we will present today. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Thanks, Giordana. Thanks for opening the floor for the presentation of the research. As Giordana said, I am the coordinator, international coordinator of this part of the research. I will explain that in a minute. And I will present a bit what we call the transnational synthetic report, and I will have some guests, some contribution from some national researchers. So, going directly into the research that we follow in this program, the GET project. So we decided to do a research in 3 parts. So the first part would be the existence and implementation of GCE policy in the 8 countries, and it is what we are going to present right now. A second part that would be about the curriculum mapping, so how GCE is integrated in the curriculum, and that part of the research will be presented in the 3rd webinar of this cycle in July, and we are now also undergoing the 3rd part of the research, is that how these 4 global challenges are integrated and are treated in the school textbooks. So we are mapping also the school textbooks. What we did was create national teams in the 8 countries, and we have we end up with 9 regional teams because in Spain there was a decision, a national decision, of divide the north and center Spain and Andalusia. So Andalusia is treated separately because we have partners from these regions in the project. So what we will hear, the findings that we will hear in a moment, will be based on these 9 national regional teams that created 9 national and regional reports. And we had the international coordination, so Mela for the second part and myself from the first part, we developed these transnational synthetic reports that you can access through the QR code that you can see right now in your screens. So the methods that we used, it was that, so we had 9 regional teams. We met several times during the time of the research. We had bilateral contacts, and so we organized all the research, the scripts, the interviews, the methodologies, everything was decided and validated in group. So we had mainly 2 methods, so desk research that follow a script, as I said, looking for policies, policy documents and all that. And then we had interviews and focus group with these national and regional actors that were identified for each national team. So the outputs that we have already spoken is these national reports plus the transnational synthetic overview that I'm now presenting for you. So one of the first comparative findings concerns language used to describe this field. I think it's not new for everyone that works in the field, that we work in a field that it's very diverse in terms of terms that we use. So we could find global citizenship education, and we can see this mentioned in all of the 9 reports. We have also global education. We can find global education mostly in the countries from the east of Europe, like Bulgaria, Czech Republic, Poland, and we cannot dismiss here the role of for instance, the Council of Europe or GIN working in this area and, and promoting, also working with this terminology. We have development education in countries like Ireland, Portugal and Spain, countries that still use this terminology, and also education for sustainable development that in our research came more from the Greek context. Some conclusions about, some notes, some comments about these findings is that this diversity is not accidental. It is connected completely, is rooted on historical and political context. So as I said, there are some countries with colonial pasts. There are countries where these fields come from the cooperation sector, so they use more development education. There are some countries where it comes more from education sector, so they use more global citizenship education, for instance. And there are countries that come more from sustainability, for instance. So these diverse terminologies is really embedded, is really contextualized in the international contexts. But it was also important because we asked what the terms mean. So what were the concepts? What were the significance behind the words used? And there was a conceptual convergence. And what we find, it was around the SDG 4.7. It was really important. It was mentioned in all the reports. The human rights approach was also very important. The sustainability, also this approach. The solidarity towards, all the peoples in the world. The interculturality and migration was also a theme that was really, really mentioned by all the reports, and also this participation, this active participation of citizens. So the engagement also. So there is a shared field. Even if it is diverse, there is a shared, a common ground in the 8 countries that were studied. And we can also see that there is a pragmatic approach when there is politically sensitive environments. What do we mean by this? That we are aware that in some countries, concepts are used one or another, depending on the actors they are trying to reach. So if you are speaking to teachers, or if you are speaking to policymakers, maybe you are using different terms, even in your own country. So you can use global citizenship education and global education, depending on the actors that you are using. And also, there are some of them that could be more neutral, because, I don't know, imagine global citizenship education, because it's mentioned in the SDG 4.7, meaning that this allows dialogue and implementation to continue when in spaces where there are politically sensitive environments, for instance. So sometimes it's better to look for the common ground when we have some sensitive issues that we come across. In terms of the key actors, because the concepts matter, but without actors, we don't have a field. So what we found, it was the key actors are the ministries, because we are speaking about policies. Don't forget about that. So ministries are really important, and usually there is the foreign affairs that lead or co-lead with education, the GCE agenda in their own countries. And usually they have the coordinating role and also lots of times funding national strategies in the field. So foreign affairs is one of the key ministries involved, also with education, as I said. Education usually is co-leading these processes with foreign affairs, and they are more responsible for curricular integration through their specialized agencies in curriculum or teacher education, these different agencies. NGOs and civil society platforms are also very, very, very important, because they are the main actors considered of implementation, advocacy, training, and resource development, of course. Teachers are not here, but teachers are at the center of formal education implementation, of course. So they serve here, so teachers are cross-cutting as an actor. We have higher education institutions, mostly identified in two main roles, so teacher education and research, and we are here today bringing and bridging this gap. And we have international networks, and Jean was mentioned in all of the reports, Council of Europe, some of them, European Commission also, and UNESCO. And these international networks and organizations are seen as external sources of legitimacy, of pressure, sometimes forms of making pressure at a national level because of these international commitments, and reference frameworks. So the international networks are very, very highlighted as a key actor to work even at a national level. From here, there is a conclusion that starts to emerge, that the multi-actor coordination structures accelerate GCE implementation. It was something that in this chapter, lots of reports stated that when they work separately, the impact is not as strong as if they work all together, and we can see this in different countries, and we'll hear that in a minute when our national researchers starts also to share something. Moving on, policy frameworks, because this actor configuration is closely connected to the policy frameworks, we could see that we have the 5 out of 8 countries studied in this report affirm that they have these GCE strategies: Czech Republic, Ireland, Italy, Portugal, and Spain. So in these 5 countries, we can assume that we can see that there is a national strategy devoted to this topic. There are other configurations. For instance, Bulgaria and Poland, they don't have a national strategy, and they rely more on civil society actors for implementation. So they have relevant entry points and ongoing development, but we cannot identify a national strategy. And we have the Greece case that is very paradigmatic, because translates GCE through a strong education for sustainable development development framework. And because this is very, different from what we have, we will hear Elena speaking about this case in a minute. Just to finalize this main finding of the policy frameworks, I would like to say that one of the main findings is that the strategies, having a strategy is not enough on their own. So it's really important if they bring these, they are meaningful when they have these robust architectures with interministerial coordination, with governance, these governance bodies that are interministerial, with other governance bodies, with other actors in the country, when they have dedicated funding lines, and when they have implementation and monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. So it's very important to have a policy framework, but they are stronger when they are accompanied with these robust architectures of, coordination, governance, funding, and monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. And so, to illustrate a bit this Greece case, I would like to invite Elena to speak, to share with us a bit what we mean by this specific ESD approach in Greece. Elena.
Thank you very much, Salete. Thank you, everyone, and hello for giving me the opportunity to present the evolution of environmental education in Greece, tracing its path towards sustainability and global citizenship education. Our journey, as you see in the timeline in the slide, began in 1977 with pilot programs about environmental education. By 1990, environmental education was officially institutionalized, and by 1992, it was integrated into primary and secondary schools nationwide. Landmark milestone was 1993, when Greek Ministry of Education established the first network of environmental education centers, bridging the gap between theory and action. These centers, like the one in Castoria, as you see in the photos in the slide, provide experiential hands-on environmental training for students and for teachers across all over Greece, and promote outdoor education directly doing actions into the ecosystem. In 2001, interdisciplinarity is introduced into the national curriculum, and through flexible zone mandatory programs, the environment were viewed through a complex web of natural, social, and economic factors. The 2011 reform is a massive paradigm shift. We moved from teaching about nature to education for sustainable development, focusing on long-term values such as social justice and the active role of students in transforming their environment, their own environment. The whole school approach was adopted, also inquiry-based projects for students that enables them to investigate real sustainability challenges and, of course, promote the connection between school and local society. Recent transformation focused on the 21st century skills such as critical thinking and social responsibility promote a holistic view and also include climate action and sustainable living strategies. Through skill labs, sustainability becomes a core competence developed by every student in Greece. Since 2024, active citizenship actions fully aligned with the 17th Sustainable Development Goals, foster global awareness and local actions, but we will talk later about the active citizenship actions, which is the frame that leads to global education in Greece. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you for illustrating how a national context can influence the term that you use and the evolution of the term also in the country. Thank you very much, Elena.
Thank you, thank you.
So, after analyzing the key concepts, the key actors, and the policy frameworks, I know that everyone wants to know more about the countries. Unfortunately, we don't have much time, so we'll have just some of the researchers illustrating some cases. So I invite you to read the reports, the national reports that are in the web page, so of the project. But I will just give some snapshots of the situation in each of our country. Of course, it's very limited one, it's a very short one, but just to give a glance about how is the GCE in the policies in the country. So Bulgaria, as I told you before, is a country where there is no strategy on GCE, but there are some entry points. And some entry points is this Preschool and School Education Act and Ordinance 13 that establishes the legal basis for citizenship or values education into the curricula. So it was very highlighted from the research from Bulgaria. But she's also stressed the idea that citizenship education arrives really late at school, because just in the 11th and the 12th grade. So there is some limitations here, some obstacles. And there is a GE program, a global education program, a national GE program that was developed with NGOs, but is still pending. So this is a good opportunity that needs some steps to move forward. Another country is the Czech Republic. It was also a part of our study. There are strategic documents from the development sector and from the educational and environmental sectors. So as we said before, it was considered one of the countries that has actually a strategic document. So they have the strategy for global development education. You see another terminology, global development education and awareness and global interconnections, 2018 and 30. And from the educational and environmental sectors, so there is here another sector also. Czech Republic is an example of other involvement of other sectors. They have the strategy 2030 plus and the strategic framework 2030 and other. So what's missing in Czech Republic, according to the report, is this articulation. Is this articulation among sectors and also with civil society, for instance. And we have Greece, and so I will not say any more words about Greece, and I will invite Elena again to share a bit about this Active Citizenship Actions program. Yes, Elena, so the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much again. Active Citizenship Actions is totally aligned, as I said before, with the 17th Sustainable Goals of Sustainable Development, and of course leads to global education development. First of all, I want to mention that Greece is the first nation to fully align its curriculum with the Sustainable Development Goals 4.7, placing political literacy and critical thinking at the heart of our strategy. Active citizenship now unfolds across 4 critical domains: environment, social solidarity, human rights, and quality of life. Through skill labs, we cultivate empathy and responsibility, while the whole school approach tries to transform schools into living laboratories of sustainability. By utilizing e-portfolios additionally, every student's contribution is recognized and gains lasting value. And in summary, we are now no longer just teaching students about ecosystem. We are empowering them. We are trying to empower them as active global citizens equipped to build a sustainable future. And that's the main point for us here in Greece. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Elena, for again giving an example of a program that is promoting this global, this strategy is the strategy that Greece is putting in place, and to remind us that when we speak about sustainability, is not just environment, as you said, it's all the social justice and the active citizenship that you mentioned. Thank you very much, Elena.
Thank you.
Ireland is another country that was part of our research, and I will not say many words because we have the researcher also here. So Valerie, do you want to jump in and say some words about Ireland?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, 𝗚𝗏. I am going to present just a brief overview, particularly from a policy perspective, and the key insights that are highlights from the research in the Irish context. And you can see there are 5 areas I'm just going to briefly present to you, and very similar to all that 𝗚𝗏 mentioned in the overview and the synthesis, similar activities and engagement emerging in the Irish research landscape. And of course, we do encourage you to read the full country reports and the synthesis report for more details. So again, in keeping very much a whole of system, multi-stakeholder approach in Ireland, with an effort to work across government departments in relation to education policy, training, NGOs, an arena of collaboration and public consultation, offering organizations, both government and non-government, an opportunity to input into the various policy development landscapes. This is particularly evident in some of the policy documents that I have listed on the screen. The majority of these are our most recent versions of. It's similar again to the other countries. We see a lot of crossover in terms of the language from global citizenship education, development education, and education for sustainable development. Of particular note is the second national strategy on ESD, which is probably innovative in terms of it was a cross-government department collaboration in terms of its production to the Department of Education and Youth, the Department of Further and Higher Education, Research, Innovation and Science, and the Department of Children, and obviously being fed into by other government departments such as the Department of Foreign Affairs, but quite unusual to see a policy document produced collectively and collaboratively by 3 government departments who have responsibility for that work. We also have pivotal the Irish Aid, Department of Foreign Affairs sector GCE strategy, which highlights public sector engagement as well as school-based engagement, global citizen issues and development, and also the development education strategy. So you can see a number of documents live, all coordinating and collaborating towards a global citizenship agenda in their own sectors. And obviously these policies are wonderful, but we have evidence that we do need the support of network groups, NGOs and government organisations, subsections of those government departments. And we see that a lot in the Irish research, where a lot of those NGO organisations in particular work towards facilitating global citizenship education in practice. I've mentioned just a very small few of them there on the screen. Our Irish Development Education Association, Ubuntu, who works specifically with initial teacher education programs, and Worldwide Global Schools, funded by Irish Aid and the Department of Foreign Affairs, who works with oversight of the second level global citizenship agenda. But if you see in the longer report, you will understand from the Irish context, there are a vast array of NGOs and organisations working with this in this arena, which is testament again to that collaborative piece. and looking at how we engage and working a lot with our young people. And just, I suppose, to conclude then with some of the areas of education reform, in particular in relation to GCE and ESD as well, who are aligned within the Irish education sector. Our Teaching Council, which is oversight of all of our education programs and our teacher training programs in Ireland, introduced a compulsory module for all teacher trainers in 2021, where those teachers, both at primary level and second level, must engage in a module on global citizenship education and ESD. So from that point onward, we have confidence that that cohort of student teachers should be entering our classrooms, having at least that basic module under their belt. At curriculum reform level, global citizenship is not a standalone subject, but is encompassed through well-being programs, civic, social, political education, as well as being interspersed across the curriculum. And there are also some subject-specific programs, such as politics and society at our senior second level arena, as well as interspersed through other curriculum areas. And these are all underpinned by our junior cycle or lower second level framework, which focuses on key skills in relation to engagement, which encompass that global citizenship agenda. And just to conclude, obviously, the policy landscape looks healthy and good in Ireland, but obviously there are also challenges, and it's important to reference those. There is still some uneven implementation across schools and sectors. And probably reflective of not just the schools within this research, but internationally, challenges in relation to time and curriculum requirements can be difficult. Teacher confidence and, as I said, time pressures to cover the curriculum as prescribed, and also dependency on our NGOs for a lot of that global citizenship education support, who are subsequently dependent on funding as well, so interspersed. So a very good grounding and a good foundation in Ireland, but obviously always interested in looking how we can improve that and how things can be supported to engage at a stronger level. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Thank you for bringing the Irish example. That is exactly one of the examples of these robust architectures that we spoke before, this interministerial coordination, the institutionalized governance bodies, the funding lines, monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. So thank you for that example, even if there are ongoing challenges always. Thank you very much, Valerie. So I will continue a bit with these country snapshots. So in Italy, there is now identified a national compass that is pushing cross-curricular multilateral implementation. That is this national strategy for global citizenship education. That was, it was started in a previous European project, the Global Schools Project. So it is a strategy, but the report from Italy still saying that there is a lack of structured approach and a limited national coherence also. So there is also some way to go in Italy. Portugal is again a good example of this robust architecture in terms of GCE, because there is a strong policy backbone with multi-stakeholder coordination. So there is a committee, a steering committee. There is a group of entities that meet annually and coordinate the implementation of the strategy, and they have policy frameworks. So from the development sector, there is this national strategy on development education that is coordinated with the educational sector and the civil society. And we have in the educational sector the national strategy on citizenship education that establishes the domains that should be included in the citizenship education in schools. And there is one of the domains is sustainable development. So there is also some entry points in the curricula in Portugal. And then finally, we have Spain. But for Spain, I also invite two guests, one from the north and central Spain, so Rafael, and then we'll have also Luisa from Andalusia. So Rafael, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Salete. I'm going to explain about the evolution of education for global citizenship in Spain. In Spain, global citizenship education has a history that predates its formal recognition. It was NGOs that introduced it into schools, first within the framework of development education, then as global education, and now as global citizenship education. About the laws that allow the introduction of GCE into the educational system, I will mention only two, the most important ones. The 2006 Organic Law on Education, (LOE), marked its first formal integration into the education system. The 2020 LOE law represents a significant step forward for global citizenship education in Spain. For the first time, this law explicitly aligns education with Meta 4.7 at the 2030 Agenda and incorporates education for sustainable development and global citizenship as a mandatory cross-cutting element at all educational levels. The law requires that each school integrate it into its educational project, adapt it to its context, and places it alongside other priority areas such as gender equality, children's rights, and the ecological transition. The law is a regulatory framework that legitimizes the work that NGOs have been carrying out in schools for decades and opens the door to a more structural integration of GCE into the Spanish education system. This is a step forward that the sector values, and it comes at a time of growing social interest in issues of sustainability, global inequality, migration, and climate change. In practice, however, the GCE still lacks specific evaluation indicators and a common framework to verify its implementation in each school. Educational responsibilities have been transferred to the autonomous communities, leading to very different approaches depending on the region. This gap between the regulations and the classroom is something that 𝗂𝗵𝘁 has identified in its direct work with schools in north-central Spain. What we can observe in Navarra, La Rioja, Aragon, and Castilla y León is that teachers value GCE and consider it increasingly necessary to prepare students for current challenges. However, teachers work with a very heavy administrative and curricular workload and frequently perceive the school curriculum as already overloaded. In this context, participation in GCE training that is not accredited within the official regional teacher training system is beyond what teachers can manage. Similarly, the integration of GCE into the teaching timetable finds more space where the management team actively incorporates it into the school's project. Implementation still depends more on the individual commitment of certain teachers than on a systematic structure within the education system. This generates significant territorial and inter-school differences. So, where there are motivated teachers, committed management teams, and NGOs with a stable presence, we find transformative experiences. And where these conditions are lacking, GCE is more difficult to implement. One of the main challenges we identified is to move from isolated experiences towards more systematic and sustainable implementation models. Even so, there are success stories. For example, in Navarra, the Solidarity Schools program has been growing steadily since 2009, reaching 48 schools and 21,000 students this year, with the support of the regional government. In the Basque Country, the Avian 2030 strategy has been bringing together public institutions, NGOs, and schools since 2017 around a common framework for education for social transformation with guaranteed funding and continuity. And finally, the conclusions of our research. What we observe on the ground directly aligns with 𝗂𝗵𝘁's findings. The gap between the intended regulations and actual classroom practice would close if three conditions were met. The first one, that common indicators existed to measure how education for social transformation is implemented in each school. The second one, that the education for social transformation training offered by NGOs was integrated and recognized within the regional teacher training systems. And the last one, that all schools implemented the 𝗚𝗏 regulations in the same way. As you can see, global citizenship education in Spain still needs time, continuity, and trust among the stakeholders.
Thank you for doing this comprehensive presentation about the situation in Spain and mostly in north and center regions in Spain. So I will pass now the floor to Luisa, yes, to speak to share with us some results about Andalusia.
Hi everyone, hola, good afternoon everyone. Thank you, Salete. And after the overview of the Spanish national framework presented by my colleague Rafael, I will now like to focus briefly on the Andalusian context and share with you some of the main findings from our side. So how in Andalusia we go from national framework to regional implementation? Well, mainly developed through the regional adaptation of the law that was talking before Rafael, 𝗚𝗏, and the 2030 agenda. So within the formal education system, the Regional Council of Education in Andalusia has incorporated the concept and many of the dimensions of the GCE into the formal education system, such as sustainability, democratic participation, gender equality, interculturality, human rights, through cross-curricular approaches and educational innovation strategies. But at the same time, in Andalusia, another important dimension comes from development cooperation policies. We have the Andalusian Agency for International Development Cooperation that has historically promoted development, education, and global citizen GCE, through funding lines and educational projects, also in formal education system. So one important finding of our research is that these two policies areas, education and development cooperation, remain only partially connected institutionally, because also coordination efforts have existed in the past. They have not become stable governance mechanisms. So, as a result of this, Andalusia has developed a relatively rich ecosystem around GCE that includes educational administrations, the agency, Andalusia Agency of International Cooperation, as I said, and so many different actors, as well training centers for teachers, university, local administrations, and schools themselves. So a key characteristic in that GCE is mainly approached through the transversal and interdisciplinary perspectives, rather than through a clearly institutionalized curricular space. So this creates a lot of opportunities in one side for active methodologies, whole school approaches, but also the implementation often lacks important limitations, like a clear institutional responsibility, a stable monitoring mechanism, and common evaluation criteria. Rafael is already speak about this kind of limitations. So this is a result of implementation varies significantly between schools and territories as well into the Andalusian region. Again, in this context, the efforts becoming from the educational institution. It's based on several regional programs, created important entry points for GCE within schools. So we have the, for example, 𝗚𝗵 program that support educational innovation and interdisciplinary methodologies. Or we have the 𝗪𝗲𝗺 program, focused on environmental sustainability and climate awareness. We have the recently approved the third gender equality plan, integrates co-education and gender equality into school planning and teacher training. And alongside these programs, we have on the other side the Andalusian Agency for International Development Cooperation funding other mechanisms, also support project through supporting projects developed by NGOs into the formal education system. So, well, as we are. Most of us, we are mentioning that NGOs are one of the greatest and particularly important. They play a particularly important role into this ecosystem. So they provide teacher training, educational resources, participatory methodologies, service learning projects, so on. So, but at the same time, NGOs remain essential. Our research shows that GCE implementation cannot be understood only through NGOs, since many schools and teachers are also independently developing important work around sustainability, equality, and active citizenship. So, according to all of this, our main challenges and main conclusion of our research in that challenges in Andalusia is no longer the policy recognition, but institutionalization of and sustainability of this. So GCE still depends too heavily on motivated teachers, temporary projects, and stable funding and NGO capacity. So in this time, as Leon at the beginning was saying, that we are going through particularly critical in this current context of significant, at least in the context of Andalusia, of cuts to international development cooperation policies, with directly affect many educational projects linked to GCE. So plus, in addition, the absence, as I said, the absence of a stable coordination mechanism between the education sector and the cooperation sector continues to limit long-term implementation. So moving from isolated good practices toward systematic integration will require stronger institutional coordination, more stable funding structures, and long-term political commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luisa. Thank you, Luisa and Rafael, for bringing these particularities of Spain. That is a country that has lots of regional freedom as Luisa explained, in the ecosystem. They have their own regional policies, their regional actors. So it's a very intertwined landscape in Spain. Thank you for this. We will move. We are reaching the end of our presentation. I'm just presenting here. So after the snapshots of the countries, I will get back again to the common ground. And here there are some findings about the perception of the stakeholders. So what we had before, it was more focused on the policies, desk-based research, but there are some conclusions that came from the findings, that the perception of the stakeholders that were interviewed or participated in a focus group. And lots of them aligned what we have just heard from Spain and from the other countries. So it's a really easy thing to understand. So lots of times, in some of the countries, there are this idea that the policies are better than the everyday practice. So that there are policies aligned in some countries, so that it outpaces everyday classroom practice. And there are four main thoughts that I'd like to share with you. that in these countries we have this division. In some of the countries, there is this cross curricula of GC themes across subjects, and in other countries there are these specific subjects like civics or even history or geography, where they used or these well-being programs, as Valerie said, or these ESD programs, like it was said also by Elena, that are more GCE focused. Another conclusion is that there is this very individual dependency, just like Luisa was saying. So there are relying on teacher initiative or local leadership. There are, in another place I've heard, these local champions. So there are champions, and GCE is really relying on these persons. So it's not really structured in the countries. Another finding about this perception is about the territorial variation. So even the schools, the implementation in the schools depends a lot on leadership, commitment, on resources, on the contact with NGOs or not, depending on where they locate. So there is a lot of territorial variation of these policies into practice. And again, what was said already by our national actors, that there is this irregular coverage of NGOs in the countries, and they are really there is a depending on NGOs project funding cycle. So we know that for 3 years we have funding, but then we never knows what happens next. So there is this huge dependency on project cycles. Arriving to the end. So what main obstacles we found on this implementation? And it's here that, policymakers can intervene, and then researchers can intervene, researching more. We divided it into 3 challenges. So conceptual challenges, structural challenges, and practical challenges. So in terms of conceptual challenges, we've already addressed it. There is sometimes terminological confusion. It's a concept that is complex, and there is some abstraction. So what do we really mean? This always comes in the discussions, and that has also this political sensitivity. So in some countries, there are some concepts that are, or that some thematics that are more difficult to address. There is also these structural challenges. So this perception of teachers that the curricula is always overcrowded. So what to prioritize, that the policies are fragmented. We heard that a lot in the previous minutes. There is some institutional instability also, the governments that change, the reforms that are always undertaking. Even when we started in 2024, this research, and within the period of the research, we had lots of changes. So we have addendas already to the reports because the situation has moved. We have also this weak cross-ministerial coordination, as we've spoken before, and these fragile and monitoring and evaluation systems. In terms of practical challenges, we have this limited teacher preparation. We know that, and we need to focus on that. Policies need to strengthen this part. This shortage of age-appropriate resources, and with age-appropriate, that comes from basic levels most of the time, that they feel this need. The heavy workloads of teachers, of educators from NGOs, so we feel that also, and the few career incentives. So teachers, they don't feel valued when they work in this field. But these obstacles are not reasons to step back. They show that there are where the support systems, where the policies, where the implementation support is needed. But there are also opportunities. There are already policies that can help us to legitimize, and we can the work that is being done. So there is already policy levers. There we can catalyze multi-actor partnerships. So we can, in order to reduce fragmentation and to support continuity, there is this opportunity of connecting more and more the actors in the countries, and even at regional and international level. We have pedagogical approaches, new ones the whole school tools, the cross-curricular integration, the project-based learning that can make GCE more embedded in school life, in daily school life. We have teacher professional development mechanisms already in practice where we can embed the GCE even more and more, and we have also resources that we can disseminate more and make more available for teachers, because they are essential for scaling practice. And we have evaluation frameworks and access to funding in some countries, and even at an international level, like the European Commission, like the project that we are now, that can help move beyond isolated projects and short funding cycles. So there are some opportunities. Just ending some recommendations. And these opportunities led to these recommendations that point to this overall direction, moving from individual enthusiasm to systemic integration. And so what we speak is about clarify and align concepts, is to reinforce strategies, governance, and this policy coherence among ministries, is institutionalize partnerships and multi-actor collaboration at a national level to put in practice and to promote more implementation, to strengthen curricular integration on GCE, to promote higher education in terms of research, but also in terms of teacher education, to adopt whole school approaches, so of GCE, more than just one single subject, but more whole school approaches, and also to produce and facilitate the access, so disseminate resources, to develop monitoring and evaluation schemes, and to establish and promote funding mechanisms that can facilitate the implementation. So thank you very much for the time you spend with us here. So I'm inviting you to consult the national reports, the transnational syntheses that are already in the website. You can access to the QR code. And thank you very much. I give a special thanks to all the national teams. Some of them were here, some of them are not. So what we are presenting here is a collective work that was behind all of these findings. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, La Salete, and thank you very much to all the speakers. I think it makes a great difference to hear directly from the researchers working in the national context. So thank you very much for that.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Yes, I would like to end saying that this kind of studies, we think as a project, as Giordana said at the beginning, that these kind of projects that have a research part connected with the practice are really important, because with this research, and strengthening again what Giordana said, the research are now influencing the resources that we are producing, the courses that we are offering to teachers, also our dialogue with the actors in our country. So now when lots of the researchers are saying, lots of the countries are saying that with these reports in their hands, they can approach the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and ask for this and for that with evidence. So I think that this having this research part of the projects, even if the projects are not, academic and research based per se, it's really important, because it really helps us to find the basics to go into schools and to address properly the challenges that teachers are facing, and to go to the Ministry of Education and Foreign Affairs, saying what we need, what is being said, what we praise, what we have already, because we found lots of things, as you've seen, lots of countries say that they have better policies than practice. So the question is also this gap. Usually we speak about the gap between research and policy makers, but there is also the gap between policy and implementers. We find it's written in all of the reports. So I think it's really important to have this research and these evidences that allows us to go and speak with different actors, knowing what we are talking about. So I think this is very important to bridge gaps among different actors, and that is really important. And another thing that is really important, and it is said, and I will finish with this, and that it is said also in the Mentimeter, is that how similar are the situation. Of course, that each country has their own situation, but if we share the final obstacles, the final opportunities and recommendations, they are very similar. So this means that we can support among us. And someone said in the Mentimeter also, that is also similar to Southeast Asia. It was someone saying this, the challenges are similar between Europe and Southeast Asia. That means that we can work together to get a better GC for everyone. So that would be my final thoughts.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much, Salete. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to all the speakers. And I think it was a very, very rich session and the best possible way to start this new series. And thank you for all of you that participated today and for the really supporting comments going on in the chat. And we really hope that you will be interested in participating in the next webinars that we have planned. The next one, as I said, is on the 17th June. And it's organized by Platforma, which is a pan-European coalition of local and regional governments looking into local GCE policy and actions and how they can contribute to rebuilding trust in democracy. And then we will have another one from the GET project on global citizenship education in national curriculum. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to continuing this series together.